We are a professional regulated asset management business, but we're unique in that we've chosen only to serve the University of Oxford, and we're wholly owned by the University of Oxford as well. But what we found is that the constituents within the university can clearly, quite rightly, can choose to go to a number of different places for their asset management and capital needs. And we don't necessarily want to compete with those outside, but we have to be honest that others from the outside might come in, and in certain circumstances we would find that we'd be asked to present to a potential investor at something like a beauty parade, which really didn't work for us in terms of the sort of culture we were and also the unique way in which we operate. And we found it difficult sometimes to get our message across about why we were unique, why it made sense to be only focused on the University of Oxford, and what was different about us to other groups who might be out there.
I think for us now the challenges were really clear, but they weren't at the time. And we'd grown rapidly. Faye, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and I had worked together for a very long time, and we had a particular way of doing things, expectations.
I think what Watering Can really helped us do in a very clear way was think really methodically and also right down to the root fundamental issues about how we should treat those people. And it was very, very clear that one of the big leaps forward that we made through was really use the language of partners with our underlying investors. And it sounds like a small thing, but that change in language and defining what we meant by a true partner was really useful. And it's really liberated aspects of our decision making and how we run our business. That's indisputable now. We know because of our core values we're only here because of our partners, and our partners come first, and every time they set us a challenge or an issue, that's our top priority. And it sounds very simple, but we hadn't reached that stage on our own.
It's been really interesting because it's changed our whole attitude when we deal with our partners. Using the word partners is, you see, just when we speak to them and call them our partners, their body language changes.
We came up with a set of values that we were desperately pleased with, and we really felt articulated what we were about, but also what we wanted to be. But turning those into actions means that you've got to do something about them every day, and sometimes it's slightly painful. But you need to, like we do at our weekly meetings, talk about and remind ourselves why our values are important, and go through examples of how people have lived the values each week. When we talk about making business decisions, when they become most difficult, we often say, are these decisions within our value set, and how are they being led by our values? The reason we feel comfortable with it is that it wasn't just a set of slogans that we came up with on a whim. It was the product of 2 days of some really hard soul searching about how far we'd come and then what we wanted to be. And then with Watering Can's insights, how do we articulate in very simple terms what drives us? And I think that's the reason we got buy-in, and that's the reason that we can live them each day.
Everybody feels a lot more engaged in the business as a whole, and everybody is a lot more understanding of what drives the business, how important everybody is, and how we're going to get those good returns. And everybody gets the rewards when we do well.
I think MPS is a fantastically valuable tool. I'd say it's almost invaluable, frankly. I think you have to be very brave to do it, which is a really interesting aspect, but you get an enormous amount out of it. And I think it's great having an outside group running that for you, because you can have that independent, it removes you from the emotional aspect of the customer or employee relationships that you have, and it also dispassionately collects the data in a very insightful way. We found a number of things with our NPS, both from comments about culture internally, where people were able to say things very honestly in a straightforward way. Even though we have a close culture, sometimes it's difficult to do that properly. And I also think with our customers, we learnt an enormous amount about how they perceived us. And we were very happy with the feedback that came back. But there were things where we had some sudden light bulb moments where we could see certain strands and certain themes that really enabled us to get to the real problems that we were facing. And we still face in some respects. But MPS really illuminated those aspects in very concrete ways.
One of the key things that came out of Watering Can for us as part of the MPS, particularly from the staff, was how under-resourced we were and how stretched everybody was. So we knew that one of our key next steps was to resource, to recruit appropriately. That in itself takes time, and it's something that we have not necessarily invested enough of the senior team's time in the past. The material we produce about ourselves is much more reflective of what we are. It gives potential candidates a good feel for who we are and what we're trying to do and what our culture is. And you know, it has given us the confidence to turn candidates down because they won't fit. Whereas I think before we would have perhaps thought we could change them, or that they might change and they might adapt. You know, we've got a very strong identity now, and if people don't fit with that, we're a lot more confident to say, well, you're not the right person for us.
Our plan for growth was not really on revenues that we were trying to generate, it was on the importance we were to our individual partners that we already had. So it wasn't the acquisition of new customers for us, it was being much deeper partners to those who'd already entrusted us with their money. And the way that we phrased it in a recent report for them is to say, we want you to think of us as your endowment office. We don't want them to think of us as one of many managers. And so that was really important for us. And each week when we sit round and we have lunch, we all have to talk about the successes. You know, we have to celebrate our successes, which I think has been perhaps the biggest and best change that we've had, because we actually celebrate things we've done well, and I think it makes people feel good. What was really important for us in articulating our business plan was to bring our whole board along with us, because it's quite amazing with board meetings, and I sit on other people's boards, you can all think you're talking about the same thing and you're not. And when you set it down, and you set it down really clearly, everyone goes, well, of course. But that's not the conversations that were actually going on around that table before. So we have a very clear plan for growth for the future for the next 3 years that all of our board has bought into, and that's been the most important thing, if not the most important thing of this whole exercise.